Very good morning. You're watching News 9 Live. I'm Karthik Malhotra, and this is the week where we kickstart our budget expectations, running up to the date of 1st of February, this Saturday, when Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will present the union budget this year. Well, in other developments, over the weekend, the central government, the Finance Ministry, has notified the Unified Pension Scheme. We'll tell you all about it today. And also, of course, on the budget discussion, we will be joined by three very special guests this morning. We will have with us Adil Shetty, Riaz Thinani and Anita Rastogi. So stay tuned. You're watching Morning Brief at 9. This is Morning Brief at 9 on this Monday morning. You're tuned into News 9 Live. First up, let's look at all the action that's happening around the world. And let's look at the global headlines making news today. Bank of Japan raises key interest rate to 0.5% amid economic recovery signs. Remember, inflation in Japan came in hot at 3%. And Wall Street ended its week lower as investors showed caution ahead of Fed Reserve meeting slated to be held later this week. Tesla's $44 billion Twitter acquisition struggles with stagnant growth and revenue. Elon Musk reveals that the platform is barely breaking even. Meanwhile, the tariff war has begun. US President Donald Trump has announced tariffs and sanctions after Colombia rejects migrant deportation flights. Mexico too rejects requests from Donald Trump's administration for US military aircraft carrying deported migrants to land in the country. Meanwhile, Donald Trump hints at rejoining the World Health Organization and plans $1 trillion Saudi investment boost. And Donald Trump's proposal for Jordan and Egypt to take more Gazans has been rejected by Hamas. Trump and Los Angeles mayor clash over wildfire response during Pacific Palisades briefing. And South Korea's suspended president Yoon Suk-yeol indicted on charges of leading an insurrection following his brief imposition of martial law on December 3rd. Let's begin our top story coming in from Japan. The Bank of Japan has raised its key interest rate by 0.5% from 0.25%, a 25 basis point jump. Bank of Japan governor, speaking after a two-day policy meeting, said the economy is showing signs of gradual recovery, but cautioned that uncertainties such as overseas inflation and currency fluctuations remain. Recent data indicates inflation is hovering around the central bank's 2% target, with consumer prices, excluding food, climbing 2.5% last year, marking 3 consecutive years of increase. Remember, December alone saw a 3% rise. The governor reaffirmed that further rate hikes could be on the horizon provided economic stability continues. Meanwhile, wage growth is becoming a key focus as Japanese workers are poised to secure meaningful pay rises during annual union negotiations. And moving on to the US, Wall Street ended the week in the red with major indices closing lower on Friday as investors took a cautious stance. The Dow and the S&P 500 both slipped about 0.3% each, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq dropped 0.5%. More details in this report.
U.S. stocks closed lower on Friday as investors digested a mixed bag of economic data and earnings reports, as well as the first week of President Donald Trump's second term. The Dow and S&P 500 both shed roughly 0.3%, and the Nasdaq lost 0.5%. Existing home sales for December were stronger than expected, while business activity slowed to a 9-month low in January. And the University of Michigan's consumer sentiment reading for January dropped for the first time in 6 months. Despite Friday's stock losses, Wall Street's indexes advanced for the second week in a row. Liz Miller is president of Summit Place Financial Advisors.
What we're really going to take from all of this is that there is, optimism with some caution with the new administration stepping in. And when we look across the market, we do know there's that handful of top 10, top 15 S&P 500 stocks that are richly valued and have had tremendous runs. But that leaves us about 485 stocks that are at very reasonable valuations and have not fully participated. So this is still a very attractive market moving forward for investors.
Among Friday's stock moves, shares of AI chip leader NVIDIA fell 3%, reversing a sharp rally earlier in the week. Texas Instruments shares tumbled 7.5% after forecasting first quarter profit below Wall Street estimates. And Boeing shares lost ground after the plane maker warned of a fourth quarter loss of about $4 billion. Next week brings a slew of key inflation and economic growth data, as well as the Federal Reserve's two-day policy meeting, with the central bank expected to leave interest rates unchanged.
Staying with the US, Tesla CEO Elon Musk's $44 billion acquisition of Twitter, now rebranded as X, is facing mounting financial challenges. In an internal email accessed by the Wall Street Journal, Musk revealed that the platform is barely breaking even, citing stagnant user growth and disappointing revenue figures. The purchase, financed in part by a $13 billion debt, has placed a heavy burden on the company, with annual interest payments exceeding $1 billion. Major banks, including Bank of America, Barclays, and Morgan Stanley, are now working to offload portions of the debt they underwrote for the deal. And US President Donald Trump announced retaliatory measures against Colombia after the South American nation refused entry to 2 US military aircraft carrying deported migrants. The measures include tariffs and sanctions, part of the administration's broader immigration crackdown. In response to Trump's tariffs, Colombian president announced plans to impose 50% tariff on US goods. More in this report.
U.S. President Donald Trump said on Sunday he would impose sweeping retaliatory measures on Colombia, including tariffs, sanctions, and travel bans. The move comes after the South American country turned away 2 U.S. military aircrafts, with migrants being deported as part of the new U.S. administration's immigration crackdown. Trump's swift action appeared aimed at making an example of Colombia, to dissuade other countries from defying him on deportation flights. He said Colombian President Gustavo Petro's refusal jeopardized U.S. national security, and has directed his administration to take retaliatory measures. That includes imposing emergency 25% tariffs on all goods coming into the United States, which will go up to 50% in 1 week, as well as a travel ban and visa revocations on Colombian government officials and its allies. Petro condemned the practice, suggesting it treated migrants like criminals. And in response, Colombia threatened a 50% tariff on U.S. goods. According to the State Department, the United States is Colombia's largest trade and investment partner, and Colombia is also the U.S.'s third largest trade partner in Latin America. Mexico also refused a request last week to let a U.S. military aircraft land with migrants. Trump did not take similar action against Mexico, the U.S.'s largest trade partner, but has said he was thinking of imposing 25% duties on imports from Canada and Mexico on February 1st.
And with tariffs and immigration battles heating up, it's not just Colombia but even Mexico which has rejected a request from the Trump administration for a U.S. military aircraft carrying deported migrants to land in the country. According to U.S. and Mexican officials, Mexico denied permission for the C-17 transport aircraft to land, halting the plan to use the country for deportation flights. Take a look.
Mexico refused a request from President Donald Trump's administration to allow a U.S. military aircraft deporting migrants to land in the country, said U.S. and Mexican officials. On Friday, 2 U.S. military flights and a commercial chartered flight transported about 80 migrants each to Guatemala. But the plan to have a C-17 transport aircraft land in Mexico did not move ahead after the country denied permission. The U.S. State Department and the Pentagon did not immediately respond to requests for comment. In a statement on Friday, Mexico's foreign ministry said it had a, quote, very great relationship with the U.S. and cooperated on issues such as immigration. When it comes to repatriations, we will always accept the arrival of Mexicans to our territory with open arms, it said. A Mexican official did not give a reason for the denial. Trump's administration announced earlier this week it was relaunching the Remain in Mexico program. It forces non-Mexican asylum seekers to wait in Mexico until their U.S. cases are resolved. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said that such a move would require the country receiving the asylum seekers to agree, but that Mexico had not done so. Sheinbaum has expressed openness towards accommodating Mexican nationals who are returned. But the leftist leader also said she does not agree with mass deportations, and that Mexican immigrants are vital to the U.S. economy. U.S.-Mexico relations have come into sharp focus since Trump started his second term, with the declaration of a national emergency along the two nations' shared border. The Pentagon said the U.S. military would provide flights to deport more than 5,000 immigrants, held by U.S. authorities in El Paso, Texas, and San Diego, California.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump, in a seesaw, has hinted that he may consider rejoining the World Health Organization just days after the U.S. began its withdrawal process. Trump also revealed plans to ask Saudi Arabia to boost its U.S. investment to $1 trillion, up from the $600 billion already pledged by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman over the next 4 years. Take a look.
I withdrew from the World Health Organization, where we paid $500 million a year and China paid $39 million a year, despite a much larger population. Think of that. China's paying $39 million to have 1.4 billion people. We pay. Gonna take some bad ones out. I withdrew 4 years ago, but Biden immediately went back for even more money. They offered me at $39 million. They said, we'll let you back in at 39. So we're going to reduce it from 500 to 39. I turned them down because it became so popular. I didn't know if it would be well received even at 39. But maybe we would consider doing it again. I don't know. Maybe we would. They have to clean it up a little bit. But China pays $39 million for 1.4 billion, and we're paying $500 million for 325 million. I don't know. What the hell is wrong with these people? What the hell? Man, oh man. It just, it infuriates you, doesn't it? Saudi Arabia just said that they're going to invest at least $600 billion. This is because of the election, by the way. And I believe they'll make it $1 trillion. I'm going to ask them to make it $1 trillion. What the hell? The money means nothing to them. You know where they made their money? From liquid gold, right? They got a lot of liquid gold. We have more. We have more than Saudi Arabia. They've got a lot. We've got more. We got more than anybody. We just don't use it because of the environment. These people are crazy. 28-year-old cocktail server here at Circa, who's got big dreams of...
All right, moving on. Hamas officials, along with many Palestinians, rejected a proposal by U.S. President Donald Trump for Jordan and Egypt to take in more Gazans displaced by the ongoing conflict. The suggestion comes as mediators continue efforts to resolve a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, which has left tens of thousands of displaced Palestinians from northern Gaza unable to return home. Take a look.
As tens of thousands of displaced Palestinians were blocked from going home to northern Gaza on Sunday, many rejected a suggestion by U.S. President Donald Trump for Jordan and Egypt to take in Gazans, either temporarily or permanently. Trump told reporters on Saturday he asked Jordan's King Abdullah during a call to take people from Gaza, describing the war-torn enclave as a demolition site. He added that he was set to speak to Egypt's president on Sunday. Trump said he wanted to get Arab nations to build housing at a different location for Gazans, suggesting, quote, "We just clean out that whole thing." One Hamas official told Reuters Palestinians would reject any such offers, even if they, quote, "appear to have good intentions under the guise of reconstruction." The remark echoes the people's long-standing fears about being driven permanently from their homes. Palestinian analyst Ghassan al-Khatib said he believes Trump is looking to resolve Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's political woes over the war.
I think this dramatic statement from President Trump about transferring Palestinians from Gaza into Jordan and Egypt came in order to try to rescue Netanyahu from sinking in the sands of Gaza. And I don't think that there is a place in reality for such an idea.
Jordan's foreign minister said on Sunday the country was firm in its stance against any displacement of Palestinians from Gaza, and Egypt has expressed a similar stance several times before. In central Gaza, this Palestinian said he completely rejected Trump's proposed solution, while another displaced man slammed it as a futile attempt to drive us away from our Palestinian land. They were among the many northern Gazans who had been stuck at roadblocks trying to get home, while mediators held talks with Hamas and Israel to resolve a dispute over their ceasefire deal. Israel had refused to reopen checkpoints to the north, saying the Palestinian militant group failed to release a hostage on Saturday or hand over a list of details about captives who were alive, while Hamas blamed Israel for the delay, accusing it of stalling. Though later on Sunday, sources told Reuters agreements had been struck over the release of the Israeli woman captive, with reports of progress in the ongoing talks.
Time for a very quick break right here on Morning Brief at 9. But coming up on the show, all the expectations of Budget 2025. Will Finance Minister bite the bullet and cut taxes? We'll discuss that on the show today with Adil Shetty, Riyaz Thingna and Anita Rastogi. So don't go anywhere. You're watching News 9 Live.
Associate sponsor, New Virtus GT Line, Style to Wander.
Your promise is IGI certified. Your legacy is IGI certified. Your ambition is IGI certified. Your diamond is IGI certified. Authentic moments need authentic diamonds. Get your diamonds IGI certified. 14-step grading process. 50 years of trust. IGI Trust Certified.
Mama must be missing us, nah?
Let's take you on, man. Give me one day. Feel the itch under my skin. It's a one day. You been like it when you see we are done. Hey. It doesn't matter. Just gotta get the way.
New GT Line, Taigun and Virtus. Volkswagen.
ये बड़ा होके मम्मी का, पापा का, दादू का सबका ध्यान रखेगा।
रिटायरमेंट के बाद किसी पे बोझ ना बनने का परफेक्ट प्लान। कैनरा HSBC लाइफ इंश्योरेंस रिटायरमेंट प्लान। कैनरा HSBC लाइफ इंश्योरेंस, प्रॉमिसेस का पार्टनर।
India spends $75 billion on foreign cargo vessels.
$75 billion per annum. You know, that's a lot of money.
Imagine a situation where 95% of our cargo is coming on ships which are not owned by us. If we are still not prepared, if someone were to say that we are not going to give you ships, then we'll be stuck. So the entire nation's economy is at risk.
We are very clear that shipping is also strategic, because without that you can't really be the third largest economy in the world.
This and more. Streaming on News9 Plus. News is now content. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
Welcome back. You're watching Morning Brief at 9 right here on News 9. And as Donald Trump becomes president of the United States and the tariff issues begin to surface, there is pressure on emerging markets currencies against a stronger dollar. Remember, in the month of Jan alone, foreign portfolio investors sold as much as 64,000 crore rupees from the Indian markets. Now, that of course seems to be one of the pressure points on the Indian markets this morning. Let's look at the data and see how the Sensex, the Nifty 50 and the small and mid caps are holding. Not too great. In fact, a sea of red this morning. You're seeing the Nifty 50 now well below the 23,000 mark. Remember, there were expectations of Nifty to actually cross 24,000 ahead of the budget just 5 days to go, but Nifty barely being able to hold 23,000 level. So it's the case with Sensex. Sensex is down about 0.7% this morning, down to about 75,600 odd levels. The small cap index is the most hit this morning as markets opened just a few minutes ago, down more than a percent point, and volatility in the Indian markets is high at about 17.68. Let's look at the sectors, let's look at the heat map and see which are the sectors which are underperforming today. And well, that's, like I told you, a sea of red. Pretty much every sector is bleeding today. Reliance is down about almost a little under 1%, and you've got Infosys and most IT stocks barring TCS, which are down more than 1% this morning. TCS down just 0.3%, but Infy is down 1.4%. Tech Mahindra down almost 1.5%. So is the case with the banking stocks. Look at the banking stocks. HDFC is down about 1% this morning. Axis Bank down about 1.25% or so. Similar story also on the consumer durables, and Mahindra is down about 1.5% in trade this morning, and Tata Motors is also down about 1.6%. So overall, not great news for the stock markets as they open for trade this Monday morning. But with that, let's move to the headlines which are making news today right here on Morning Brief at 9. To begin with, the centre has notified the Unified Pension Scheme, a guaranteed pension payout that borrows elements from the old and the new National Pension Scheme. Digital arrest mastermind. 43-year-old Suresh Kumar Sain arrested from Indira Gandhi International Airport, was returning from Cambodia. Digital arrests, especially among the retired, were used as a tool to extort money in disguise while placing the victim fraudulently under a virtual arrest. In a bid to expand its manufacturing outside of China, iPhone maker Apple is now in talks with Bharat Forge to reportedly make components for its iPhone assembly. Remember, Apple it makes iPhones in India with Taiwanese Foxconn and Tata Group that owns controlling stake in Wistron and Pegatron. Apple exported $17.5 billion worth of iPhones from India last year. Padma Awardees 2025 list released on Republic Day includes 139 honorees. Suzuki Motor Company's chairman Osamu Suzuki, who passed last year, receives India's highest civilian honor, the Padma Vibhushan, posthumously. Economist Vivek Debaroy, who also passed last year, received the Padma Bhushan. Other notable business names include former SBI chair Arundhati Bhattacharya and former managing director of Mahindra & Mahindra Pawan Goenka, who received the Padma Shri. As the rupee tanks amid a stronger dollar, Indian markets witness a flight of capital. 64,000 crore rupees exodus by account of foreign portfolio investors in just the first 24 days in Jan 2025. Ahead of Donald Trump's presidency and potential tariffs, India's exports to the US last year went up 5.6% to $60 billion in the April to December 2024 period. And all eyes are on Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman as she prepares to present Budget 2025, the Halwa ceremony with FM Sitharaman, MOS Finance Pankaj Chaudhary and the Finance Ministry's secretaries kicked off ahead of Budget 2025. And staying with Budget 2025, tax cut demands reach a crescendo. Will Finance Minister pay heed to the clarion call of the middle class asking for an income tax cut? And as income tax demands rise, will Budget 2025 also see the merging of the old and the new tax regimes? All this and more we will discuss on the show today. The Finance Ministry has officially announced the operationalization of the Unified Pension Scheme or UPS under the National Pension System for central government employees, which was implemented starting April 1st this year. The new scheme will ensure guaranteed retirement benefits for employees covered under the NPS who choose this option. Now, just to break all this complex pension system down, here is all you need to know about the Unified Pension Scheme. Well, the Unified Pension Scheme has been notified and it combines elements, like I told you, from both the old and the new pension schemes. And just like the old pension scheme, UPS guarantees a short pension. So that is point number 2 that you need to know, that like the old pension scheme, UPS will guarantee a short pension for retirees. But unlike OPS, employees are now going to pay 10% of their basic salary plus DA to their own retirement corpus. But that's not all that employees have to do. Even the government has decided that the government under UPS will add the same 10% amount in the pension corpus for every serving employee. Now, additionally, the central government will add another 8.5% of basic plus DA to support this guaranteed pension. Now, a short pension under the UPS is going to be 50% of the basic pay prior to retirement of a central government employee. Now, how is this 50% calculated? Well, this 50% calculation is on the basis of the average of the last 12 months of the salary drawn, the basic plus DA drawn by a serving employee ahead of superannuation. So 50% of the average of the last 12 months is what the government is assuring as pension under UPS. Now, minimum pension is going to be 10,000 rupees after completion of minimum of 10 years in service. Now, in addition to that, there's going to be the family payout component, and the family payout is going to be 60% of the last pension of the retiree before his or her demise. Now, according to the Jan 24th notification issued by the ministry, the Unified Pension Scheme will apply to central government employees who are already covered by the NPS and decide to opt for the new scheme. The Pension Fund Regulatory and Development Authority, or PFRDA, is expected to issue further regulations for its full implementation. The Uttar Pradesh Special Task Force, or STF, has arrested a man named Suresh Kumar Sain, reportedly the mastermind of a digital arrest cyber fraud syndicate at Indira Gandhi International Airport, New Delhi, yesterday, that is Sunday. 43-year-old Sain, a school dropout from Rajasthan, had fled to Cambodia after executing a series of frauds across India. This as per a Times of India report. He had built a network of criminals who impersonated officers from organizations like CBI, Narcotics Bureau and Crime Branch, tricking victims into believing they were under investigation. The syndicate used fear and manipulation to extort money. STF recovered Cambodian employee cards, SIM cards, an ABA bank ATM card and $160 in cash from Sain. And moving on, tech giant Apple is reportedly in discussion now with Bharat Forge to likely make the Baba Kalyani-led metal maker one of its vendors to make iPhone components here in India. This would mark the latest partnership between Apple and another major Indian company after Tata Group that owns controlling stake in Pegatron and Wistron, two of the three companies that assemble iPhones in India for Apple. The third, of course, being Taiwanese Foxconn. The move comes as Apple pursues its China Plus One strategy, and the timing seems apt as US tariffs on China could soon be underway. Apple, remember, produced $17.5 billion worth of iPhones in India just last year, well ahead of its target, and has become one of the biggest beneficiaries of India's production-linked incentives or PLI scheme for electronics manufacturing in the country. Very short break, but coming up on the other side, what does Budget 2025 have in store for you, the middle class tax-paying citizen? We will bring a heavy discussion, but we will try to simplify it for you on what you as a viewer and as a citizen should expect from Budget 2025. Joining me on the show will be Adil Shetty, Riaz Thingna and Anita Rastogi. So come back after this very short break.
Mama must be missing us, na?
Let's take it one bit, give me one day. Feel the itch under my skin, it's a one day. You be like it when you see we are done. Hey! It doesn't matter, just gotta get going.
New GT line, Taigun and Virtus. Volkswagen.
I will take you to Paris.
Paris नहीं, Paris. तुम्हारा pronunciation भी ना, तुम्हारे इरादे की तक.
मैडम इरादे कभी ऑफ नहीं होते हैं, टेक ऑफ करते हैं।
SBI Life Smart Platina Supreme के guaranteed return से करो पूरे अपने इरादे, अपनों से किए सभी वादे। SBI Life, अपने लिए, अपनों के लिए।
We are at the highest airfield in India and one of the highest airfield in the world. It is the most beautiful airfield in India. There's no aircraft that cannot land on this airfield.
This will be the highest airfield in India and 5th in the world.
This particular runway will cater for most of the military aircraft, fighters and transport landing.
A strategic edge to the forces, deterrent for our neighboring countries.
Jai Hind.
Yes, 100% completion. TV9 News and your News9 Plus is the first team here.
This and more. Streaming on News9 Plus. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
Welcome back. You're watching Morning Brief at 9. The countdown for Budget 2025 has begun and the Halwa ceremony was conducted on Friday by Nirmala Sitharaman, the Finance Minister, and the entire Finance Ministry. But is there going to be more Halwa, and is the Halwa going to taste sweet for the middle class is something that all eyes are on right now. With just 5 days to go for the Union Budget, today on the show we discuss, will Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman offer a magic bullet for the middle class, and will she bite the bullet when it comes to tax reduction for tax-paying citizens in India? Well, let's put this into perspective first. Now, what is it that we know for sure right now as a key driver to decide on the trajectory of India's economic growth vis-a-vis taxation? Well, to begin with, the GDP growth for India has slowed down, and boosting consumption at this stage is a key to revival. So there's not just a feeling for the middle class, presumably, that Finance Minister would have, but there would also be this, hopefully, this ultimate objective of reviving the economy on the basis of consumption. Now, why is consumption important? Well, consumption is important because private consumption makes 60% of India's GDP. Now, we've seen urban demand has been in decline for the last almost 5 quarters or so. So, urban demand is something which drives consumption, and that has been in decline for 5 quarters. And with that, the double whammy is that household savings are also at their lowest level. Add to this the pain of the middle class with corporate increments, if at all there are, unable to cover for inflation. And inflation, remember, has been coming in hot. Add to that taxpayers. Well, just some data here. Taxpayers have doubled from 3.35 crore to 7.54 crore in the last 10 years. But while this tax collection and the number of people paying taxes is high, it has doubled, those who pay zero income tax or nil returns have gone up 3 times, from about 1.7 crore to 4.73 crore. Corporate tax, which is taxed at a rate lower than the highest slab of individual income tax, those collections have gone up just 83%, from 5.56 lakh crore to 10.2 lakh crore in the last 5 years. Personal income tax collection in the same period, however, have gone up 141%, from 4.92 crore lakh rupees to almost 12 lakh crore rupees. Now, the middle class is obviously the bearer of the brunt of everything that happens, and it is not just taxes. Even the job market continues to be thin. Like I told you, inflation is eating into salary, and with that there is frustration over high taxation. Now, there's not just taxation by terms of the direct income tax that you pay, there is also the indirect taxes, or GST, which is on pretty much everything that you consume, from your popcorns to the 28% GST that you pay on SUVs. And then I told you the nil taxpayers are the ones who are bearing the brunt, and hence there are fewer taxpayers to share the burden of economic growth. Well, is there a real case for Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman to cut taxes this year? Joining me to discuss this are two very special guests right now. I have Riyaz Thingna, tax partner, Grant Thornton Bharat, as well as Anita Rastogi, principal, Price Waterhouse, joining me this morning. Thank you so much both for being here on Morning Brief at 9. Riyaz, let me start with you. Direct taxation, middle class being the biggest contributor when it comes to direct tax collection for the government from the individual tax category. Is there a real case, like many are demanding and expecting this time, for the nil tax bracket to go up to 10 lakh rupees of income?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. Yes, there is always a case for the middle class, because the middle class, as you rightly pointed out, bears the burden of taxation on the non-corporate side. A couple of things that also indicate that there will be some relief. I think in some press interactions, the government sources have claimed that, at least they are planning to have some tax relief for income below 15 lakhs of rupees. So there are indicators that there will be some improvement as far as tax rates are concerned, but the asks are a lot more. But we should also keep in mind the fact that the government has announced a comprehensive review of the Income Tax Act. 22 committees have been set up. Some 6,500 odd comments have come in from the stakeholders. Now, with that whole process should take a year to complete. And in the meantime, we will have a few changes which are made, but some of the larger changes will come in also when the comprehensive review takes place, where rationalization changes should be coming in. The asks in the meantime from the middle class are quite a few. One is reduction of the tax rates, widening of the tax slabs, increasing the limit from of 80C deductions to 3.5 lakhs, etc. One interesting demand which has been coming in is the need to have joint tax returns between husband and wife.
Right.
That is something which is going on. So let's see what the Finance Minister has in store for us.
Right. If I can just bring you back in here, Anita, I'll just come to you in a minute. But Riyaz, if I can just stay with you for a little longer. While these demands are there and these expectations are there, how realistic are these expectations in your mind? And do you think there is time for the government now to actually focus not as much on tax collection by way of of bringing the fiscal deficit in control, but actually go for growth, which has been faltering. So is there a real case, even from the point of view of the exchequer, to actually go ahead and give this consumption boost to the economy?
No, definitely. Besides, yes, to boost the consumption, yes. You know that inflation has been high. There has been some reduction or some control of inflation in the last 2 quarters, but there is high inflation, and definitely there is a huge need for the middle class to have more money in hand. And as you rightly pointed out, the consumption levels have gone down. Retail consumption has gone down. The largest consumer is the strong middle class. I think the need for having these things, these reliefs is very real. I think the government has a case for it because the direct tax collections have risen year on year. And even this year, it is showing a rise. I think, if I remember right, some 11.7% is the collection of direct tax as a percentage of GDP. So I think the stage is there for the government to have the flexibility to give some reliefs. They have also indicated that they are interested in providing relief at least to the income below, to assessees with income less than 15 lakhs. So I think there is a real case for reduction, some tweeting on the personal tax side.
All right. Well, let's hope that what you're saying is something that Finance Minister is also thinking on the lines of. But Anita, if I can bring you into this conversation. Now, there is also this indirect component of taxation, which is by way of GST, duties, customs, pretty much everything that you pay to the government after you have paid the tax on your salary or on your income, as the case may be. But with this cut in taxes and hopefully more disposable income available in the hands of the consumer, there is going to be a fillip for the government's indirect tax collection as well when it comes to all the increased consumption activity that lower taxes could lead to. So help us understand, how does this work and why it is imperative for the Finance Minister to take into account the indirect taxation as a default benefit of reduction in direct taxes?
No, absolutely. I think there's a clear direct correlation in the fact that if I have got more disposable income with my hand, I can definitely buy more goods. And if I buy more goods, the consumption increases. And when we talk about consumption, there is already tax embedded on that, which goes to the government. But I think I'll come over here from a larger perspective and I do believe that India today is expecting a lot of bold announcements from the government. And why I say the bold announcements from the government is not just that government has to look at the growth. Today, we are at a stage of a little bit of a geopolitical uncertainty, which is where it is so critical and important for the government that from an indirect tax perspective, which is the customs specifically, when I talk about in the budget, because customs is something which is going to be impacted big time, is with regard to the various imports which India does. Now, there is where the government has to be mindful of the fact that because of a lot of uncertainty happening across the world, we know that globalization helps a lot of things, but because of uncertainty, there is a challenge over there. So that is where the government has to focus. That is one. The second thing is, today we look at India as a prime hub for a lot of these global capability centers being formed. Now, GCC is a great thing which is happening for India. Now, which essentially means that there are foreign companies who set up their establishment in India to provide services from India, which actually gives a lot of employment to India, a lot of consumption, etc. So, which is where I think that the government should come up with some very good tax policy for boosting that GCC growth as well, which could be as simple as, giving a GST refunds faster, right?
Right.
The other thing I would like to talk about is the climate. Now, climate is such an important aspect which government cannot overlook. Now, with giving the commitment to achieve a net zero by 2070, things like e-mobility. Now, that is the one aspect which the government should take care of, where you really need to reduce the customs duty on a lot of these EV components, right? Which is important for the manufacture of EV vehicles, etc., to be used in India. And it should also have a GST alignment that in the entire value chain, the GST should also not be really a cost. And hence the ultimate benefit of the fact that e-mobility is something which is being prioritized by the government and used by the consumers should be considered.
Absolutely, I agree with you. I think you're talking, Anita, about the inverted duty structure where in the case of EVs particularly, the tax on input that goes into making the final product is much higher than the tax on the final product itself. So, of course, and on climate, I think I can just say that the climate has changed around climate talks ever since Donald Trump has come into office in the US. But let me bring in Adil Shetty, CEO Bank Bazaar, into this conversation. Adil, good morning. Nice to have you back on News 9. Now, we are living in a world right now where there is this anticipation of tariffs. In fact, US President Donald Trump has already gone ahead and is threatening tariffs on Colombia. Colombia is saying it's going to charge 50% tariff on US. Now, with this entire tariff narrative, the dollar is becoming strong, the rupee is weakening. FPIs are exiting Indian markets. Consumption, as we just discussed, has been low, but then even bank deposits are low, suggesting that there isn't really too much money available in the hands of taxpayers to go ahead and either save or go ahead and consume. Now, what I want to ask you is that there is also this talk that perhaps instruments like fixed deposits, a pure play, safer option to invest in a debt product, is actually taxed at par with your ongoing tax slab. The interest on fixed deposits gets added to your income. Is there a case for fixed deposits also to be seen to be taxed as market-linked products like equities and debt?
So, fixed deposits are always considered to be low-risk, safe instruments which have always been taxed at the marginal tax rate. So, I think that's going to be a little bit of a tough one. However, your point, Karthik, is absolutely critical. There's a lot of, uncertainty out there, and we need to put more money in people's hands, right? And I think an ideal way of looking how to do that, because we're both saying the same thing, how do we get people into more money into people's hands, is relook at the inflation adjustments of all the tax brackets that have been there. The 30% tax bracket, which is the one that you mentioned, the 15 lakh limit was set in 2020. Now, there's been a 21% inflation since then. So that means the bracket needs to go to 18 lakh. That would save people a considerable amount of money. Secondly, there's a ask saying the tax-free limit or the level to which you don't pay taxes, can that be increased from 7.5 lakhs to, maybe a few lakhs higher? And lastly, right, I think we have seen with the Bank Bazaar Aspiration Index, some amount of slowdown in the new tax regime into these specific life insurance, term life insurance, ELSS, NPS. And we believe it's happening, right? Because now in the new regime, which everyone is migrating to, you don't have a deduction. So we're saying, can we just have a flat deduction? The whole point of the new regime was simplicity. Right. So let's keep it simple, but let's give 30% of your income up to 15 lakhs, you'll be allowed to take as a deduction. Right. So I think we somehow need to get more money into people's hands, Karthik.
More money into people's hands, and like you rightly pointed out, Adil, there also needs to be greater simplicity in filing taxes and calculating how much you owe the government. Let me bring in Riaz at this moment. Riaz, old tax regime, new tax regime, if I remember correctly, the new tax regime was started and there was supposed to be this sort of, step up approach where gradually the old tax regime fades away. But we haven't seen that happen in the last 5 years. There are people who still continue to take tax deduction on their investments. But now is it time to either merge or completely do away with the old tax regime?
So while we say that, it hasn't completely happened, I think today about 72% of the assessees are
on the new tax regime.
Yeah, they're using the new tax regime. So it has kind of become the default tax regime as such. But, doing away with the old tax regime may not be very fair because people having carry forward losses and other claims, they may still find it useful to continue with that regime. I think it'll die a natural death over a period of time. But in the meantime, I think I don't see it being merged completely immediately.
Okay, you don't see it getting merged. Anita Rastogi, now custom duty on gold. This is something that had been introduced last year, and of course, the 5% custom duty is something which perhaps did not fulfill the objectives with which the government really started out to introduce those duties. So, do you think there's going to be any change in the custom duty on gold in budget 2025?
So I personally believe that rate rationalization in the customs duty is the ask again from the government. Although the government did a lot of rate reductions and rationalization in 2023, but even today, we have 12 slab rates. I mean, why do we want so many rates? Because of that, one is that the ultimate product becomes expensive. Hence, there is less consumption by the middle class or anybody else for that matter. And also, there are a lot of classification disputes. So, I think it is an apt time for the government to look at all these rate rationalization in customs in a big way. Also, I would like to say that the government must look at trade facilitation, which is so critical and important. Why do we have so much of time which takes place for customs clearance of the goods? Those things should be done rapidly and in a much faster manner, so that the businesses are able to take the benefit of this ease of doing business. I think the thought is there, but I don't think a lot of steps have still been done which can be done in the customs aspect.
Okay, a lot more needs to be done is the word coming in from Anita Rastogi. But Adil, let me bring you back into this conversation and let's talk briefly about corporate tax. While, we as middle class tax paying citizens often don't think much about corporate taxes, but then let's face it, corporate taxes will have a direct bearing on job creation and the kind of investments that corporate India will make. Now, we are living in a high interest rate regime. We don't know what the new RBI governor is going to do soon after the budget in his first MPC and the first for this calendar year as well. So, is there a case for corporate tax rates to actually go down, while the middle class sitting on the outside wants corporate taxes to go up because they feel that at 25% corporates are not paying as much as the highest paying middle class Indian? But is there a case for reduction in corporate taxes to what we call unleash the animal spirits and get job creation going?
I think, Donald Trump has told us or shown us that anything is possible. And I think what we've seen in India before, Karthik, is specific sectors or segments, like, for example, startups, like, for example, MSMEs, or someone who set up a new manufacturing facility. We have seen them being given an incentive in terms of a lower corporate tax rate. Whether that will happen across the board, especially at a time where, the middle class is hurting, remains to be seen. However, I think the biggest thing corporates want, right, and maybe I can talk as Bank Bazaar from the fintech sector. See, we have a lot of talk and a lot of money going into physical infrastructure, 11.11 lakh crores last year.
Yeah.
Now, that money needs to be fully spent. So I think that is item number one. That spend in infrastructure is going to benefit everyone. But today, Karthik, the RBI put out a report, the digital economy is 1/5 of Indian GDP in 2025. We need the same investment in digital infra. By digital infra, I'm talking about, we've done a great job with UPI and Aadhaar.
Right.
We need investment in DigiLocker. We need investment in account aggregator. We need investment in a national financial information register, which has fraud and credit data. So I think there's an incredible opportunity to say that even if you can't cut the corporate tax rate, let's make sure that all of the money that is being spent on infrastructure, be it physical infrastructure or digital infrastructure, we make it very, very easy and fast, right, for both normal physical businesses and digital businesses to scale over the next 10 years.
Okay, investments in digital infrastructure as much as physical infrastructure. Well, while I agree with you theoretically, I'm not too sure, Adil, how many jobs digital infrastructure and investments therein will create versus the jobs that physical infrastructure like building ports and airports and railway stations and highways will. But I think it's a valid ask. Let's see what Finance Minister has in store. So we have a wish list coming in from Adil Shetty. Let me get a wish list from Riaz as well. Riaz, one practical wish list or one practical aspect that you want Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman to address in Budget 2025?
Yeah, I think the biggest ask is towards simplification and rationalization.
Okay.
The first one I would say would be TDS. Now, TDS was introduced, for two reasons. One is to plug tax leaks, and the other was to create a transaction trail.
Right.
That transaction trail is no longer really valid with all the digital tools that the government has at its disposal. Now, in the meantime, around 40 sections have come up under the TDS regime, varying rates of TDS 0.1% to 40%.
Right.
It has become very complex. There's been a lot of litigation on interpretational issues, etc. So I think that is one thing that needs to be
addressed by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman.
Absolutely, because around 3 or 4 sections contribute to about 85% of the TDS collection.
Absolutely.
So cut it down and reduce it. I think that is one. And I think the second part, which is very important, is to ease the appeal scheme.
Right.
Appeals, the timing of the appeals is very important.
Appeals, simplifying and strengthening the appeals process. Anita Rastogi, last word to you, and it's actually a pointed question, so I'm not sure if I'm being fair or not, but the pointed question being that between GDP growth and fiscal prudence, what should be Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's priority for Budget 2025?
Yeah, so I don't think that I'll be able to give you an absolutely exact answer on that, but I think I still want to show my vislation, to you as to what are the things which she should be doing.
Sure.
3 things which I would like to focus. One is that apart from trade facilitation, she should look at trade promotion. Today is a time to promote the trade. Facilitation is fine, ease of doing business, all of that you're doing, and there's much more to be done. Second thing is that, there are cases in GST where the taxpayers have gone to the courts, and in Supreme Court, they've got favorable orders. And now is a time when the GST Council does a meeting and they say, hey, we are going to do a retrospective amendment from July 27, from July when the GST was announced. And that I think really just gives a very, very wrong impression that, the taxpayer has gone and fought it before the Supreme Court. The benefit is something which you don't want to give. I think those are the things which should kind of be avoided at this point of time. And I think the last thing is the FTAs. The foreign trade agreements are something which should be signed with many, many more countries, and a proper benefit should be given to the Indian importers in order to do a lot of manufacturing in India, boost the manufacturing, and thereafter export from India. I think these are my 3 key wish lists.
All right, well, let's leave it at that. Anita Rastogi, Riaz Thingna and Adil Shetty, thank you so much for taking our time. We will, of course, have all of you back with us on Budget Day, but for now, let's leave it at that. And with that, it's a wrap right here on Morning Brief at 9. News and updates continue at 10 a.m. Join Shriya Kundu as she brings you the latest. Thank you very much for watching.
Valuations can be frothy. Going public is almost like what some of us would like to say is the holy grail, right? IPOs are a trend, not a bubble.
Do secondary markets exist? Answer is absolutely yes, and it's been around for a very long time.
Valuations could be high or low, and valuations may correct